Meet Mike. To the untrained eye, Mike is just highly observant. He's the friend who always looks out for you. But if you are close with Mike, you know the exhausting, terrifying truth about how his mind works. Let's say you introduce your new girlfriend, Sarah, to Mike. Sarah is a little nervous. She accidentally spills some water. She interrupts Mike once during a story. She tips 18% instead of 20%. These are micro mistakes, normal human friction. But the next day, when you call Mike to ask what he thought of her, he doesn't say, "She seemed a little nervous." He says, "She is a toxic, controlling narcissist. Did you see how aggressively she wiped the table? She has rage issues, and she interrupted me because she clearly has no respect for anyone. You need to run." Mike has taken a tiny, human flaw and mutated it into a catastrophic character defect. He hasn't just criticized Sarah, he has fundamentally assassinated her character. If you have a Mike in your life, you know the feeling of walking on eggshells. You know that one wrong move, one bad day, and you will be the next monster in his story. Today on Psychology Every Day, we are breaking down the psychology of the exaggerator. We will explore why some people are biologically addicted to finding the worst in others, the defense mechanisms driving their smear campaigns, and how to protect your own sanity when you become their target. Concept 1, splitting, the loss of nuance. To understand why Mike exaggerates, we have to look at how his brain categorizes reality. Healthy adult psychology can handle nuance. You understand that your friend can be generous, but also chronically late. Good people do bad things. Flawed people have great qualities. We live in the gray area. People who chronically exaggerate the flaws of others lack this cognitive ability. They suffer from a psychological defense mechanism called splitting. Splitting is the absolute inability to hold two opposing thoughts about a person at the same time. The brain cannot process good and bad simultaneously, so it splits people into two extreme categories. You are either an infallible angel or an irredeemable demon. When you first meet Mike, you are an angel. You can do no wrong. But the moment you make a mistake, the moment you spill the water, his brain short circuits. Because angels don't spill water. Therefore, you must be a demon. To justify moving you into the demon category, his brain subconsciously rewrites history. He doesn't just see a spilled glass, he hallucinates a pattern of toxic aggression. He exaggerates the flaw because his black and white worldview requires you to be a monster so he can feel safe. Concept 2, the shadow projection deficit. Number 2, projection of the shadow. Carl Jung famously theorized that every human has a shadow, the dark, suppressed parts of our personality that we refuse to acknowledge. Our selfishness, our anger, our petty jealousy. If you have a healthy ego, you can admit your flaws. You say, yeah, I can be a little selfish sometimes. But people like Mike have an incredibly fragile ego. Admitting they have a shadow would shatter their self-worth. So, what do they do with all that suppressed darkness? They project it onto you. When Mike accuses your new girlfriend of being a controlling narcissist over a tiny infraction, he is rarely talking about her. He is confessing his own deepest fears about himself. By exaggerating the bad things in others, he creates a brilliant psychological smokescreen. As long as he is the victim pointing the finger at the monsters around him, nobody will ever look closely enough to see the monster inside of him. His outrage is a disguise. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever been on the receiving end of this? Have you ever made a tiny mistake and suddenly found yourself painted as the villain in someone else's incredibly dramatic story? It is a terrifying form of gaslighting. If you want to learn how to identify these psychological traps before they destroy your self-esteem, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We arm you with behavioral science every week so you never have to doubt your own reality again. Now let's look at the social currency of exaggeration. Concept 3. Bonding through mutual disgust. Why do people like Mike always need an audience for their exaggerations? Why do they call you immediately to list out someone else's flaws? Because they are using mutual disgust as social glue. Building a genuine connection with someone requires vulnerability. It requires saying, "Here is who I really am, flaws and all. Do you accept me?" But as we established, Mike is terrified of his flaws. He cannot build intimacy through vulnerability, so he builds intimacy through a common enemy. If he can convince you that Sarah is a toxic psychopath, then you and Mike are suddenly bonded. You are these safe people. You are the good guys. Exaggerating the flaws of others is a cheap, fast way to manufacture loyalty. He creates an in-group, him and you, by constantly destroying an out-group, everyone else. But this is a hostage situation, not a friendship. Because deep down you know that the moment you disagree with him, you will be the next person he builds a smear campaign against. Concept 4. Preemptive rejection. At the very core of this behavior is a profound, debilitating fear of abandonment. This is preemptive rejection. Imagine Mike's internal monologue. People always leave me. They always let me down. It hurts too much to be surprised by it. To protect himself, he scans every interaction for a threat. This is called hypervigilance. He's looking through a microscope at your behavior. When he finds a tiny flaw, he exaggerates it so he has an excuse to reject you before you can reject him. I didn't lose a friend. I cut off a toxic narcissist. I didn't ruin the relationship. I escaped an abuser. By turning everyone into a cartoon villain, he never has to grieve a normal human loss. He gets to play the righteous survivor every single time. So how do you handle the Mike in your life? How do you stop him from poisoning your view of other people and eventually yourself? You must use a technique called the nuance anchor. When Mike brings you a massive, exaggerated diagnosis of someone's character, do not argue with him. Do not try to defend the person's soul. If you defend them, Mike will accuse you of invalidating his feelings, and he will split on you. Instead, you anchor to the action, not the character. Mike says, Sarah is a manipulative sociopath who has no respect for anyone because she interrupted me. You say, it is really frustrating when people interrupt. Sarah definitely talked over you during that story. I'll keep an eye on her interrupting. You agree with the micro action. She interrupted, but you silently reject the macro diagnosis. She is a sociopath. You refuse to adopt his extreme vocabulary. You do not use words like toxic, abusive, or narcissist to describe minor social friction. You drag the conversation back to the boring, nuanced reality. People who exaggerate the bad in others are living in a terrifying world. To them, everyone is a hidden monster waiting to strike. It is a lonely, paranoid existence. You can have empathy for their trauma, but you cannot allow them to write the script for your reality. If you surround yourself with people who only see the absolute worst in humanity, you will eventually become blind to the good. Protect your perspective. Because the truth is, most people aren't angels, and they aren't demons. They are just trying their best, occasionally spilling water, and hoping you'll give them a little grace. I want to know, have you ever had a friend who turned every minor inconvenience into a villain origin story? How long did it take for them to turn on you? Let me know in the comments below. If this video helped you spot the character assassins in your circle, hit that like button and subscribe to Psychology Every Day.